Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel when I talk about things that are going on that are pretty relevant in today's world. And obviously big relevant subject still is COVID-19, and the title of this one is We Unofficially Out of Lockdown. I've been watching the press and social media over the last few days to see what themes are coming out of that, and it seems to be pretty obvious to me that lockdown is coming to an end without the government saying lockdown is coming to an end. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. The likes of B&Q and Taylor Wimpey and other places are now starting to open back up, and allegedly just going to offer their staff social distancing and some sort of PPE, and I guess that will cover them if there is any legal requirement to be covered, and so we can get people back to work. There is a bit of a problem with that, obviously, because that only happens in the areas that they control. So people coming to and from work, sharing cars, using public transport. Expect to see more pictures of tubes, trains full very quickly, and that scenario means that actually what will happen is the virus will spread again very quickly, I would guess, and we'll be back in a very difficult position within the space of a few months. So I do believe all this is somehow sort of like orchestrated, because I always believe that. I don't think a lot happens by chance. I don't think that is what's happening here. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting time. So expect to see the high street opening back up very quickly, and some sort of normality, and no direction from a government, because this government has got no direction, I don't believe, at all. Do you know what I mean? Watching today's news about, watching the media sell us, in a sense, safety. 10 million tests are available for workers and their families. 10 million tests aren't available at all. It's a lot of rubbish. That's what they'd like to be available. We're currently doing 50,000 tests a day if you're lucky, and that includes all the hospital tests of people who are ill. So even with the 10 million, it would take 200 days without any retesting of anyone. So, you're talking that 3/4 of the time of the year, basically, just to go through this. And that's if everyone could be done, and they obviously won't. So that's rubbish. But I think part of this as well is obviously it's both political and a financial decision. The political decision is, and I've said this all along, that they don't give a shit. Actually, personally, I think this is actually really helping them. I mean, we've got a prime minister that is, out and out is a racist, homophobic, sexist. The biggest death rate, sadly, is along black and ethnic minorities. So to him, that must be great, because he's getting rid of the people he never liked in the first place. He's getting rid of the old and the social care system, so that solves another problem for him. Because he doesn't see them as productive in society, I don't believe. But this is, I think, part and parcel. Basically what they're doing is they're exploiting something rather than actually manufacturing it. I don't believe that the conspiracy theory is that there is this is a targeted thing. I think what happens is actually it's come along and they've done what they do best, basically exploit it to their own advantage. So the other part of this is now, obviously, that will now start to become apparent. They're going to talk to us about the cost, the financial cost of this, and how I've noticed these figures starting to be banded around, and etc. And I think the real interesting thing about this is what they are doing is they're using the same trick twice, basically, and they will carry on using it until we actually eventually decide to do something about it. And for me personally, unless you want to be taking some direct action and protest and actual, getting out on the streets and holding to account, this is not going to stop. But Let me explain something. I think it's really important. The cost over the last 4 weeks, because technically they've only furlonged for 4 weeks, the cost over the last 4 weeks to the Exchequer is about £1.5 billion, which sounds a huge amount of money, but it isn't a huge amount of money. You know, our current national debt is around 2 trillion, so it's a very small amount of money, and it's even a very small amount of money in proportion to GDP and everything else. What is interesting about this is the money that they've given to companies. So free loans that have gone through a bank, which I guarantee they will have to make a charge, obviously, before their services. But that's not for now, right? They had 80%. 80% wasn't working because what happened was what they wanted the companies to do was to put up collateral, and the reason why companies won't put up collateral is very simple, is because most of these companies don't make any money anyhow. Do you know what I mean? So it was presented to be to help the small company, but actually very few small companies could ever benefit from this. It was your big companies who were going to benefit from this. It was basically supporting the corporate structure through the back door by the taxpayer. So to give you some idea, he's put 1.5 billion aside for furlong staff, but he's put 300 billion aside for companies, right? Because we are in a situation where we are back to what we did with the banks, where we lent them billions of pounds to survive. And it wasn't about lending them billions of pounds. What it was about is it was about making sure that shareholders got a shitload of money at the end of the year, regardless of whether the banks did well or not. And now we're going to give shareholders a shitload of money because they can do interest-free loans, which is basically probably with no time scale to pay it back, right? So what they can do is, two things have happened here. One is, if you go for capitalism, it's very simple, yeah? You own a company, companies are owned by shareholders. If the company makes money, they make money. And if companies lose money, then they're meant to take the loss. That no longer applies in today's current situation. Here's the system. They make money if the company makes money, and if the company loses money or something happens like it has today, then they don't use their money. They use the taxpayers' money, right? So basically, you have the governments who are basically doling out our money to support huge corporate companies at great expense to us. And then what they need to do is they need to come back to us and go, you know, but we've really helped you as well because we've kept you going for a month at 80%. Yeah, and the problem is, you know, people will buy that lock, stock and barrel and never ask a question. So 300 billion to them, 1 billion to us, but we pick up the whole tab. End the story. And how are we going to do that? Right, well, what's going to happen now is they are going to say, we need to tighten our belts. This is what they always say. We need to tighten our belts. We're going to have to make cuts. We've seen you through this very difficult time. So what we're going to do is we have got no choice but to cut the public purse, which is very basically we're going to cut public spending, which is going to be horrific because it's been cut to the bone. There's, you know, anyone knows services will know that. The other part of this is it's about austerity. Now, this is a political choice. This is not a financial choice. What they can do is they can put corporation tax back to the level it was in 2010. They can tax the wealthy a little bit more, you know, and they can close the loopholes in the tax avoidance scheme. But they're not going to do that because coming out of Europe was predominantly to stop that one piece of legislation that Europe was putting in place that was going to be enacted on the 31st of January, where they would have to be transparent about where all the offshore bank account is. So it's not that they can't do it. They can, but it goes against their genetic makeup. So we are going to spend another decade of suffering because of this. The other part of this is, it's going to be really interesting, is that as we lift these restrictions, and what they'll do is they won't relift them in a sense. What we'll do is companies will just go back to work and say, well, you know, it's necessary, right? What's going to happen is they just now want a manageable death rate. They're not bothered as long as the death rate is manageable. So if they can keep it around 400, 500, 600 a day, I think they're going to be very happy with that. And they will do that for as long as it takes until basically the virus is gone. So I think we're probably looking back at what we started off with as an overall death rate to this country over the next 2 years of approximately 200,000 people, maybe more. Because the realistic terms we're currently at is we're probably currently at, if you take healthcare, old people's homes and others, you're probably looking at maybe we're close to 30 to 40,000 already in a month, and it's not leveling. So that is going to be the plan. The way they're going to sell it to us is very, like I've said earlier, we're going to have to pick up the tab for the business. We're going to have to pick up the tab socially. We're going to have to pick up the tab with regard to the death rate, because it's pretty clear which parts and members of society are being targeted, or not being targeted, but are going to be more fervently affected by this illness, this virus. And so that is the current direction of travel, and that is really fucking worrying. And I was watching people like the People's Assembly and the other people who are more compassionate towards what society trying to organise, and they talk about putting pressure on. Let me tell you, right, the only way you are ever going to put pressure on these people is by direct action, nothing else, because they don't give a shit. Do you honestly think Boris gives a shit? Do you honestly think Ian Duncan Smith gives a shit? Do you honestly think Jacob Rees-Mogg, who doesn't even believe in abortion, gives a fucking shit? You are absolutely delusional if you think that. Do you know what I mean? Anyhow, I did the one about Boris. His resurrection is now about to be complete. He's about to come back to work. He needs to sack a few people and show how different he could have been if he's in charge. He was fucking in charge, people. He was in charge from the outset. However, he's too busy having holidays and pissing about to worry, because he doesn't give a shit. So at what point this country actually wants to give a shit, I don't know. So, but get ready. The next round is coming. I will see you back here soon when I know a little bit more and deciphered a little bit more of what the sneaky fuckers have been up to. Okay, hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye.